Ro, when I say the word Tevis, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Passion. Love of horses.
Yeah. How about you, Corky?
Good friends, good times, good horses, beautiful country.
Fun.
Yeah. A lot of fun. A lot of work.
And the trails,
Yeah.
the country. That's awe-inspiring, riding over the Sierras. Awe-inspiring.
And,
Starting at Tahoe. Unbelievable.
Yeah. The one thing about the Western States Trail is you get to experience the elevation descent.
Yeah.
And so all the, from the high country of Squaw Valley and the wilderness area all the way down into, our canyons and the Manzanita and the Oaks and all the way, to our river, and just amazing, isn't it? Is, your experiences with Wendell, because I know both of you knew Wendell Roby, I'm sure. And
Well, Ro knew Wendell a lot better than I did.
I started with coming to Tevis because of an interest. Read about it in the 60s in Western Horseman. So did a lot of people. And in 61, after I got out of Cal Poly and could have some freedom to move around a little bit, with Ed, I came on up and check out Tevis. So met Wendell and Drew, and they were amazing because if you wanted to ride Tevis, they would give you anything. Moved up here in 1970, no jobs, we quit jobs in the Bay Area, lived in Woodside. Moved up here, and Wendell says, don't worry about a loan, let's just find you a house, and we'll make it work. And he would do that. If you were on his good side, he would do anything for you. And so looked around, ALT, etc., bought Drew's house in Loomis on Whiskey Bar Road.
Wow.
He let us assume her loan. Did a lot of rides with him, did a lot of rides with Drew. Drew was such a class act lady that it was unbelievable. And riding with Wendell was an adventure.
Yeah.
Straight off a cliff, anywhere,
Yeah.
boondy bash. I remember poor Diane just being totally nutting up because we were going straight off a cliff. Paige Harper's horse got stuck in the brush. They had to get somebody to bring down some kind of a clippers to get him out.
Jeez.
Oh, I mean, it was always an adventure, but it made you what you were as an endurance rider because it got to where you had no fear. Because if Wendell left you, you were on your own, baby. You find your way back.
Trails. He knew the trails.
He knew the trail, and
Right.
he knew where to go, and he had a good sense for it. So it was wonderful. And it was the same thing with driving with Wendell. Drove across Rucky Chuck in a car with him and Drew.
You drove across the river.
Drove across the river. In those days, it wasn't, I don't think the dam, when did Hellhole go? Or
I'm not sure. But
Okay, drove across. It was scary as all get out. Of course, the horses used to cross there too. But So he was quite an experience, and he would do anything for you if you were on his side. And then Drew, I mean, they became your friends and family. And that's what started. How could you not be taken? And it just changed my life.
Yeah.
And the first time I crossed No Hands Bridge with their tutelage and with their help, I knew I could do anything I ever put my mind to in my whole life.
Started to do some breeding. I had some Arabs and was starting to do some breeding, but they were young horses and they were more involved in the breeding world and to a small extent the show world, than I was in the endurance world. But I had this god-awful old, well, she wasn't old, but she was just ugly as sin. And she was a registered Appaloosa.
You could ride her head.
Yeah, well, that's why I called her Pelican. I
remember her.
Yeah, I mean, she really did have a big, ugly head, but she was a great old honest horse.
Yeah.
And she, there wasn't anything pretty about her, not one thing. I mean, she was pig-eyed and swishy-tailed and, but she had good legs on her. And, she was stubborn in her own way, but I think it kind of worked for her. And so she was the one that I actually
She was
finished.
good around other horses.
Yeah, she was. She was. But and she was the one that I actually finished
got your
Tevis
buckle on.
that I got my buckle on.
All right, all right. So, Ro, when your first Tevises were actually started at the town of Tahoe City.
Tahoe
And so,
City.
what was that like to
It was
start
really
there?
fun because you vetted on the lake. So I have some pictures somewhere, Bob, of vetting on the lake, and you stayed in what they called the cabbage patch, which was across the highway, and it was literally a cabbage patch. I don't know what it is now, near the golf course and stuff, I think. And horses everywhere, trucks, trailers everywhere. The town was very open. They were very nice. And then we'd start at the post office, that picture that has Wendell in the front from the first ride.
Yeah.
Where they did all of that. And you rode under a controlled start, which on a 100-mile ride with a hot horse is really fun. A little difficult to keep things under control. And you rode down what is now a paved bike path along the Truckee River. And you went a certain distance and then cut over a bridge and ended up wandering through the knee knocker trees to Squaw Valley. But going down that bike trail, there were always people. There were people camped on it. You were jumping sleeping bags.
Yeah, because you're going through there at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, and it was just unbelievable. And people trying to get out of the way, and horses spooking. And if anybody from a tax supply followed the trail from there to Squaw Valley, or to actually Alpine Meadows, you could start a tax store with the bottles and the saddle blankets and the everything else flying off right and left. Then you got into, and I think it was Bear Creek that we started at, and you started in a controlled start.
Okay.
4 at a time, groups of 4. So you played the chase game the whole ride. If you were in group 1, you were always looking over your shoulder and what group are you in? What group are you in? If you were in group 20, what group were you in? Oh, you were in the second group, the first group. Well, you knew you had them. All you had to do was keep them in sight.
Right.
And you could beat them if you got through all the vet checks. The vet checks were really a lot looser when you came into a spot for a vet check, let's say Robinson. You had a crew. The ride didn't provide anything for you. You had a crew, they brought your water, they set you up, they had hay, they had everything there. And at that point, your horse could take a break. You came in, they took P&Rs, I can't remember in what sequence. They checked, you were okay, and then you went back for a recheck. That's when they took the P&Rs. You had a little bit of time. They could relax, they could eat, they could drink. You could pull the saddle. You had time to do that, which you don't do now.
No.
You get in and people are throwing, everything, it's a mess. And then they vetted out in the meadow. It was beautiful in that meadow when they had the cattle in, now they don't run cattle up there anymore. So it's all getting all brambled and bushed again, so they can't use the meadow anymore.
So maybe we were feeding them 10 pounds of sweet feed, thinking we were doing something good for them, but we weren't. But that's what we had.
And alfalfa.
That's what
Don't
we
forget
had.
alfalfa.
And alfalfa and different calories that weren't necessarily helping the horse. Now we know about fat and fiber and things, but we had to learn that from the early days.
Well, electrolytes.
Electrolytes.
We made our own electrolytes up.
So in the early,
she crushed pills that she found later in the 70s, but in the 60s, Todd had a formula and Lou Hollander had some formula. And we crushed everything up, mixed it up ourselves, and either put it in the paste or put it in our water.
It was 1 part light salt, 1 part regular salt, 1 part dolomite, and then 2 parts regular salt. That was Todd's formula, I remember.
Yeah, and I'm sad that we didn't do anything with him. He wasn't mentioned anywhere that he had passed. So
I know.
But that's a thing.
And he was definitely, Todd Nelson was definitely one of those veterinarians that put a lot of interest in.
Well, he sure did a lot for his customers.
Yeah.
So then Kathy Perry and some of it. We got to do something. We got to have some rides. So we all got together and got American River Ride going. And then Sister came in and said, you know, this stuff is so cool, because everybody heard of Tevis. So she said, I think I'm going to start something over in Castle Rock, in her country, and get that started. So that got started. And then in Knowing the Tones, Blue Mountain got started. So then it all, and from there it just grew
It just
crazily.
took off. Well, you know, you bring up NATRC because I did an interview with Phil Gardner, and he said when they were forming forming AERC, our endurance body, that there was pushback on it because most of the riders that were going from NATRC to AERC didn't want the rules, and because there were so many rules in NATRC that they didn't want rules. They just wanted it to be
judges,
you know,
on the trail judging you, hiding in the
right,
bushes. And
right.
You had to stop somebody 2 miles from the finish and go in. You had a minimum and a maximum time, and all of that. So when Kathy, Phil, Gordy, myself, you know, some of the others all got together and said, you know, we're getting these rides started, and we don't have anybody to help other people get started. That's how AERC got founded. We'd meet at my house and we'd meet at Kathy's house most of the time. And we said, we've got to do something to help get information to people on how to put on an endurance ride. And we got Wendell sort of involved and Drew involved and Marion and some of the others. And so let's get together and do this. And that's how it got started. Then somebody brought Dave Claggett.
Yeah.
Marion. Let's do it. And so then somebody said, well, why don't we keep the points for people? And from there it developed. And then when they had people coming in and trying to do the money stuff, the Dubai stuff,
Yeah.
okay, then that's when we all agreed, thank God we were old school. No money. It can't be AERC sanctioned if there's money. We prefer mares. They're just,
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that. You prefer to ride a mare?
oh God, yes.
Yeah?
More heart. I think they have
Yeah?
more heart,
Yeah?
more
And
gumption.
we've both ridden stallions.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You know, we've both ridden stallions on rides. And,
Bitchier.
No? They
The
can
horses.
be? Yeah?
well, I mean, I've had stallions and mares and geldings, and I prefer mares. They're my favorite.
They seem to have a deeper bottom. And I rode one mare that could just really move along, and she'd just get along with everybody, and she never was a kicker, never allowed the coming into cycle being a problem. Well, if you put a stallion right next to them, but that's, you know, what the heck.
Right.
And I never had a problem with her, but we'd be riding like down the Corky Rho, and you'd come try out next to me and come try to get next to me. You'd be on your gelding, and she'd go, and the gelding would just go in reverse. I mean, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Try to pass me on a narrow trail,
yeah.
Ain't gonna happen. Not unless I give you the trail. Mares are wonderful. A lot of connections in the
Yeah.
old days. We one thing with the rides, we socialized. We'd get there the night before. None of this driving in at 8 o'clock at night wanting to be vetted or anything. You'd get there the day before early. You'd take Friday off, and you'd get there. You'd go in and you'd get your horse vetted, and you'd take care of the horse, and you'd relax. And then you'd socialize. And you'd socialize to 2, 3, 4 in the morning, get up for an hour, get up and go for a dance. Oh God, we used to do things. And then you'd get up and do the ride. And then you'd spend the night and sort of taper off and have the, you know, the banquet and the barbecue and whatnot, and get up the next morning and have breakfast. Took your time. Gave the horse a chance to relax after the ride. And then you put them in the trailer and go home. And we just had a ball. Met some of the nicest people in the world.
It's gotten to be an extremely expensive hobby anymore.
It always has
to
been.
own horses.
Always
Yes, of course it always has been, but I mean, I think now, in comparison now, I mean, 30 years ago, you didn't see people giving up their horses you know, to rescues or whatnot, because they couldn't afford to keep them anymore. And I mean, that happens almost on a daily basis now.
Well, what do you get
And-
for shoeing now?
You know, and
Exactly.
you know, and I think
It gets expensive.
Sure, sure.
No, I think when I first started shooting for you guys, it was probably $25.
Yeah, well, you know,
Gene Lockhart? God.
well, when I was a kid in Los Angeles, it cost $10 for shoes, and you could also buy a ton of hay in Los Angeles, a ton of alfalfa hay for $10. The whole dynamic has really
And if you couldn't
changed.
carry enough water, you had enough wine.
And you know, I guess if I could give, you know, young people that are doing this sport anything, it's yeah, it's a sport, and it's all right to be competitive, but you know, don't forget to have fun, and don't forget why you're really there. You're there with your horse, and you're there to experience this beautiful part of nature that most people never get to see. You know, and especially on the Tevis, you get to see a part of California that so few people ever get to see, get to experience.
And you're back to the point of it's a point-to-point ride, which is more of a challenge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's why we have so much fun. And the other thing I think that people need to realize, which I'm seeing less and less of, you still see it, but is the unique partnership between horse and rider.
Absolutely.
Well, and you know, one thing that I really like that AERC did was this a thing that they have now where they recognize a team between a horse and a rider that have been together for 10 years. You know, and that does take a special person and a special horse, and you have to have that connection in order to last 10 years with an animal like that.
Yeah, you have to have the partnership.
Right.
You do.
Yeah, and you know, so I think that's great, and it's too bad that everybody can't, you know, find a horse and do that.
Well, it's the goal. And
I think they're working towards doing that in a way, but they've gotten off in different directions because they've gotten off more on the points.
AERC's motto has always been to finish is to win. And that will, if you ride endurance with that attitude, with that horse, you will have a decade horse. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come here tonight.
Yeah,
it was
and
fun.
you know,
It's fun to play with you.
Oh. Well, the night's still young.